Have you ever wondered why some women linger in a man's mind long after they have left, as if their presence imprinted itself on the very fabric of his psyche? It is not simply desire that binds him, nor is it the fleeting intoxication of beauty or charm. The women who haunt, who shape the currents of thought and emotion in those who encounter them, occupy a territory far beyond the ordinary. They are the embodiment of what Jung called the shadow, a force that exists simultaneously within and outside the observer, a mirror of the unconscious, a catalyst for both fear and longing. To meet such a woman is to encounter the unknown within oneself. To observe her is to confront fragments of the soul that men have long denied, repressed, or misunderstood. She is never fully visible, yet she is inescapably felt, like a chord struck in the deepest cavity of memory that resonates long after the note has faded. The shadow of a woman is not merely a set of behaviors or a constellation of traits. It is the emanation of authenticity in its most unyielding form. She moves through the world not to please or to be catalogued, but to exist fully within herself, and it is precisely this refusal to conform that makes her unforgettable. Men, in their pursuit of control and predictability, are drawn to her with the same intensity as moths to flame, though many mistake the pull for lust or vanity. What captivates them is the reflection of their own incompleteness, the unacknowledged desire for self-integration, and the silent acknowledgement that life can be lived without surrendering one's essence. In the presence of such a woman, the ego feels exposed, vulnerable, and unarmed. She triggers obsession not through manipulation, but by embodying a reality that most men have only glimpsed in dreams, half forgotten, in moments of fleeting clarity when the world seemed larger than the confines of expectation and obligation. Observe her in the quiet moments, when the pretense falls away, and the ordinary masks are removed. She does not ask for validation, nor does she bend herself to fit the contours of societal desire. She speaks when she speaks, with a cadence that reverberates, not because of volume or persuasion, but because her words are rooted in presence and conviction. Every gesture carries the weight of unshaken self-knowledge, and in this, the observer senses a strange discomfort, the recognition that to pursue her is not to capture her, but to confront the uncharted territories within themselves. There is danger in this kind of attraction, for it forces men to reckon with their own shadows, the fears, insecurities, and repressed truths they have long buried. The shadow of a woman is a mirror of both temptation and terror, an intimate invitation to transformation that requires courage, honesty, and the relinquishing of control. This woman does not exist in isolation. She is inseparable from the psychological architecture that surrounds her, from the archetypal dynamics that govern attraction, projection, and power. Men respond to her not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a challenge to be understood. Some attempt to chase, to bind, to categorize her within the frameworks of desire and possession, only to find themselves perpetually unsettled, as if the ground beneath them has shifted. It is her detachment, paradoxically, that amplifies her presence. She operates on a plane of self-possession that makes every interaction a test of awareness. Can he see her without distorting her through projection? Can he experience her without trying to diminish her complexity? In her silence, there is resonance. In her absence, there is gravity. She teaches without teaching, provokes without intent, and ignites obsession not through coercion, but by existing in a manner that is wholly uncompromised. When he reflects on her after she is gone, he experiences a peculiar ache, a sense of loss that defies logic. It is not the absence of love alone, but the recognition of what he has never known, a glimpse into the fullness of life that eludes those who cling too tightly to control. Her shadow lingers in dreams, in moments of stillness, in flashes of memory, and in the subtle ways his thoughts wander toward what cannot be possessed. Men may attempt to explain it away as fascination or infatuation, yet it is far more profound. It is a brush with the archetypal feminine, a reminder of the soul's capacity for longing, transformation, and awakening. She embodies the paradox of freedom and connection, the tension between intimacy and autonomy, and in doing so, She forces a confrontation with the unconscious patterns that govern desire, attachment, and ego. You, the observer, may recognize this shadow in your own encounters, in the women who have altered the trajectory of your thinking, who have challenged your sense of control, who have left indelible marks on your psyche. It is not about possession, it is about recognition. She exists as a call to authenticity, a reminder that attraction is not merely a transaction of bodies or gestures, but a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious, a dance between light and shadow. To engage with her is to engage with the unseen aspects of yourself, the desires and fears that you would rather leave unexamined. And in this engagement, whether fleeting or enduring, there is opportunity, an opportunity to expand perception, to confront projection, to awaken to the reality that life's intensity often lies in the spaces we fear to inhabit. She moves through the world like a storm cloaked in sunlight, both illuminating and dismantling in equal measure. To witness her is to feel the pull of forces older than understanding, as though the unconscious itself has taken human form. Men who encounter her sense it immediately, the quiet tremor beneath the surface of their thoughts, the flicker of recognition in a mirror they didn't know existed. She awakens their unclaimed potential, not by instruction, but by reflection. Every word she does not say becomes as powerful as those she does. Every absence, every boundary, resonates like a bell tolling deep within the psyche. She embodies a truth that cannot be confined, that to live fully is to embrace one's shadow without apology, to move through life as a vessel of both mystery and presence, untethered by expectation. She carries the language of paradox effortlessly. She is tender and fierce, distant yet compelling, a landscape of contradictions that challenges the mind and enthralls the heart. Men drawn to her are often unprepared for the depth she evokes. Their attempts to anchor her, to reduce her complexity to desire or conquest, falter against the gravity of her integrity. It is here that the lessons of Stoicism quietly emerge. The only way to approach her is with equanimity, an acceptance of what is beyond control, and the humility to confront one's own ego. She exposes the subtle illusions men build around self-image, pride, and attachment. In her orbit, pretense dissolves, and only raw perception remains. Every encounter with her triggers an internal reckoning. He notices his compulsions, his need for validation, the patterns of pursuit he once thought were benign. She does not teach this openly, she does not lecture or correct. Rather, her mere existence acts as a prism, refracting the unexamined aspects of the male psyche. Desire becomes introspection. Obsession transforms into self-inquiry. He discovers, sometimes too late, that it was never her he sought to capture, but the parts of himself that he had denied, the shadow within him that mirrors the freedom she inhabits. In this way, she functions not only as a figure of attraction but as an archetypal guide, ushering him into the darker corridors of his unconscious, where fear, longing, and potential intermingle. Her allure is intensified by silence, by absence, by the refusal to conform to the conventional scripts of attention and approval. She understands, perhaps intuitively, that fascination is born not from insistence but from restraint. Men sense this and are drawn like tides to the moon's pull, but the connection is not one of possession. It is a confrontation with the unpossessed. She teaches that the most potent influence is never exerted directly. It is a presence that challenges, provokes, and ignites without demand. In this, she mirrors the psychological principle of projection. The qualities men admire, fear, or desire in her are often shadows of themselves. They see their own incompleteness, their own untamed depths, and are mesmerized by the reflection. Some men attempt to rationalize their obsession, to dissect it into understandable components: charm, appearance, wit. Yet these attempts are superficial. The shadow of a woman cannot be parsed in the conventional ways. It is not a sum of traits, but an emergent force of consciousness that cannot be owned, contained, or fully comprehended. She is the embodiment of individuation, a being who has integrated her light and darkness, who exists as a totality, whose power is inseparable from her self-knowledge. In contrast, the man who pursues her without such awareness encounters resistance, frustration, and the mirror of his own ego untempered. Her presence often leaves a trail of introspection in men, sometimes painful, sometimes exhilarating. He reflects on his past attachments, his repeated patterns of longing, his inability to relinquish control, and he finds himself standing before truths he might otherwise avoid. In essence, she catalyzes growth, not through instruction, but through existence, by being unapologetically whole. She challenges the illusion of possession, demonstrating that to love or desire without comprehension of one's own shadow is to court suffering. And yet, paradoxically, in confronting these depths, a man begins to understand the subtle difference between obsession and reverence, between craving and recognition, between projection and genuine encounter. You may sense her lingering in your thoughts even now, not as a memory to be captured, but as a mirror of the unclaimed territories within yourself. She is less a woman to be possessed and more an archetype to be understood, the untamed feminine, the shadow that refuses simplification, the presence that forces confrontation with your own unexamined psyche. To meet her is to encounter life in its fullness, with uncertainty, intensity, and unflinching honesty. She reveals that attraction is not merely the dance of bodies or fleeting emotion. It is a profound dialogue between conscious intention and unconscious depths, a conversation that can illuminate the very architecture of the soul. Her power is woven not in flamboyance but in subtlety, in the quiet insistence of her self-possession. She does not chase validation. She radiates an intrinsic authority that men can neither fabricate nor resist. In her presence, time behaves differently, moments stretch and condense, perception sharpens, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The shadow she carries is a silent teacher, a complex landscape of depth and contradiction, showing that true femininity is never simple, never entirely graspable, never a reflection of external expectation. It exists as a force that cannot be coerced, only witnessed, only met with awareness. The man who glimpses her feels both intoxicated and unsettled, drawn to her magnetism yet painfully aware of the distance he cannot traverse without confronting the unhealed corners of his own psyche. Her allure is a labyrinth of emotional and psychological complexity, where curiosity and dread coexist. She does not soften her presence for comfort, she sharpens it for awareness. Men encounter her and sense, often before fully articulating it, that she challenges the very foundations of desire. She is both muse and mirror, revealing through reflection the insecurities, projections, and attachments that tether men to illusions. Her gaze, quiet yet penetrating, can unsettle the ego in ways that words never could, and in this, she embodies a dangerous grace, one that evokes reverence and obsession in equal measure. She is the living paradox of attraction, simultaneously accessible and unattainable, tender and formidable, ordinary in her humanity yet extraordinary in her self-mastery. He is drawn to her not because she is easy to possess, but because she illuminates the unclaimed spaces within him. His longing is complicated, intertwined with admiration, frustration, and revelation. He chases, but it is not the woman herself that fuels the pursuit. It is the awakening she induces, the confrontation with parts of himself he has long denied. She is, in a way, a catalyst for shadow work. Every unresolved desire, every unacknowledged fear, every projection finds reflection in her being. Obsession arises not from manipulation but from the psychic friction she creates, the tension between freedom and attachment, visibility and mystery, presence and absence. In her, he sees the raw potential of his own self-knowledge, the vast territory of psyche he has yet to explore. Her silence is not emptiness, it is full of resonance. In those moments where words are absent, her power intensifies. Men misinterpret this quiet as indifference, yet it is far from passive. Silence in her is a tool of revelation, a means of revealing what cannot be imposed, what cannot be captured through effort or coercion. It is a reflection of the Stoic truth that control is an illusion and that influence arises from presence, not insistence. She demonstrates that true power lies not in domination, but in mastery over self, in the unshakable alignment with one's own value. And when he realizes this, the mind reels. Obsession becomes a mirror of his inadequacy, his attachments, and the ego's relentless striving. The men who encounter her often feel a duality of longing and fear. She challenges their comfort, threatens their control, and yet awakens profound fascination. Every glance, every nuanced gesture, every subtle shift in attention becomes a vector for introspection. They are forced to question, is the desire they feel rooted in the woman before them, or in the fragments of themselves they have yet to integrate? The shadow she carries is not theirs to conquer, it is theirs to recognize, to learn from, and ultimately, to reconcile within themselves. In this way, the woman who cannot be forgotten functions as both mirror and mentor, though neither role is acknowledged aloud. Her presence teaches without precept, ignites without command, and transforms through mere existence. You may sense the echo of such a woman in your own life, in fleeting encounters, in past loves, in the memories that refuse to fade. She does not belong to time, she belongs to consciousness, a living archetype that traverses generations, cultures, and contexts. She reminds you that attraction is more than pleasure, that fascination is more than curiosity, and that obsession often signals a neglected interior world. To meet her is to confront the shadow of self, to awaken to the depths of desire and potential that lie within. She is simultaneously muse and enigma, the keeper of a psychological threshold that few have the courage to cross. And in the presence of such a woman, every man eventually comes to recognize a fundamental truth. The pursuit of her is never about possession, but about awakening. She teaches, without speaking, that depth cannot be owned, that freedom cannot be contained, and that true attraction is a mirror to the soul. To encounter her is to encounter yourself, and in that reflection lies both the peril and the promise of transformation. She inhabits the liminal spaces where desire and wisdom intertwine, where instinct meets intellect, and where the unseen architecture of the psyche becomes tangible. Men are drawn to her because she evokes a longing for integration they have yet to achieve, a pull toward wholeness they can sense but not name. In her, they perceive a life lived without compromise, a selfhood unfragmented by external expectations or societal scripts. She is not only a woman of flesh and thought, but a psychological event, a living reminder that the ego alone cannot navigate the intricate terrain of attraction, power, and shadow. Every encounter with her is a subtle confrontation with the unconscious, where the familiar rules of interaction dissolve, leaving only the raw, unmediated play of forces beyond comprehension. She teaches through contradiction. Her presence is at once a balm and a blade, comforting in its authenticity, cutting in its insistence on self-examination. She does not embellish, explain, nor justify. She simply is, and that being carries a resonance that unsettles men and awakens them in equal measure. It is a quiet but profound demonstration of individuation, showing that one's value is derived not from others' approval, but from alignment with the self. Men who encounter her find themselves questioning not her actions, but their own assumptions about attachment, desire, and fulfillment. They are compelled to reckon with the ways in which they have projected fantasies, insecurities, and unprocessed longing onto women who, in truth, were never theirs to possess. Her shadow, far from being a flaw, is a vital expression of completeness. She embraces her contradictions, tenderness and fierceness, detachment and intimacy, silence and voice, without shame or apology. This integration of light and darkness is what makes her unforgettable, what creates the echo that lingers long after she has left. Men sense it even if they cannot articulate it. She has walked into herself, traversed her own inner landscapes, and emerged with the authority of someone who knows her own depths. In witnessing her, they are forced to confront their own fragmented selves, their unacknowledged fears, and the habitual ways in which they have sought external validation instead of cultivating inner sovereignty. There is an almost dangerous allure in this dynamic. She does not chase, argue, or plead. She simply embodies presence. Men mistake this for inaccessibility, but in reality, it is the profound clarity of knowing one's worth. In her absence, he feels the stirrings of obsession, not because she commands it, but because she awakens what has been dormant within him, the unconscious recognition of his own potential, the shadow that must be reconciled if he is to approach wholeness. She triggers the archetypal response, awakening the desire for integration, the longing for depth, the pull toward authenticity that conventional relationships rarely inspire. The silence she maintains is a language unto itself. It communicates that presence, awareness, and self-possession carry greater weight than words ever could. Each pause, each deliberate choice of absence or detachment, is a reflection of inner authority, a subtle insistence on self-alignment. Men, untrained in the recognition of such power, interpret it as a puzzle, a challenge, a test to be solved. Yet the lesson is not for them to conquer her, but to conquer the egoic patterns that distort their perception, to navigate the turbulent currents of projection and desire without losing themselves. She is the embodiment of Jung's insight that attraction and shadow are inexorably intertwined, that the unconscious animates the surface of our relationships, and that encountering the feminine in this depth is as much a confrontation with the self as it is an encounter with another. Her influence persists in memory and imagination, in the fleeting moments when the mind wanders to the absent presence of what cannot be fully possessed. Men who have known her carry her shadow with them, not as an object of longing, but as a teacher, a mirror, and a threshold. She exposes the limitations of superficial desire and elevates the experience of attraction into the realm of psychological awakening. Obsession, fascination, regret. These are not punishments, but indicators that the interior world has been stirred, that the unconscious has been illuminated, and that there is work to be done in understanding the self beyond projection and egoic attachment. You may recognize the echo of her influence in your own patterns of thought, in your memories of women who defied your expectations, who left impressions too profound to explain. She is less a person than a force, a living archetype that transcends time and circumstance, demanding that anyone who encounters her confront the shadow within themselves. To dwell in the memory of her is to dwell in reflection, to understand that attraction, in its most potent form, is a dialogue with the unconscious, a summons to authenticity, and an invitation to transformation. She exists at the intersection of fear and fascination, a living paradox that men cannot easily navigate. To some, she appears untouchable, almost spectral in the way she inhabits her own skin, moving through the world with an unspoken authority that is simultaneously alluring and disarming. Every glance, every measured gesture, becomes a subtle assertion of her autonomy, a quiet declaration that she cannot be possessed because she is not fragmentary. The men who encounter her are confronted not with a puzzle to be solved, but with the reflection of their own incomplete selves. She awakens the parts of them that have been hidden, denied, or suppressed, the layers of ego, longing, and shadow that they have yet to face. In doing so, she functions as both catalyst and mirror, illuminating the depths they would rather avoid while captivating them in ways they cannot rationalize. Her influence is felt long after she is gone, often in the quiet moments when the mind drifts and the heart stirs with unacknowledged longing. This is not a longing for her as an object, but a longing for the recognition of what she evokes, the courage to confront the unconscious, the desire to reconcile fragmented selfhood, and the awakening of latent potential that can no longer be ignored. She triggers a psychological alchemy in men, turning desire into introspection, fascination into self-inquiry, and obsession into an invitation to growth. Those who fail to recognize this mistake the pull for obsession, when it is in truth an echo of the shadow she mirrors, a reminder that what draws them is the unclaimed territory within themselves. She does not seek to manipulate, coerce, or control. Her power is inherent, born of self-possession and authenticity. Every interaction is an exercise in subtle influence, the pause in her speech, the deliberate choice of detachment, the ease with which she inhabits her own presence. Men, untrained in the recognition of such authority, may attempt to fill these gaps with pursuit, projection, or control, only to find themselves confronted with the boundaries of their own ego. She demonstrates, without words, that true attraction cannot be manufactured, that influence is not imposed but radiated, and that fascination is born from the recognition of wholeness rather than the fragmentation of desire. Her shadow, paradoxically, is both invitation and challenge. It embodies the integration of light and darkness, the willingness to confront the self without apology, and the refusal to compromise for comfort or acceptance. In this integration lies the source of her magnetism, a presence so fully realized that it ignites both admiration and fear. Men sense this immediately, though they often misinterpret the stirring within as obsession or infatuation. In truth, they are responding to the archetypal force she represents, a reminder that the feminine is not merely a reflection of ego or desire, but a complex, autonomous, and psychologically rich reality that demands awareness, respect, and courage. She teaches without instruction, transforming through existence rather than persuasion. Her silence carries weight, her absence resonates, her authenticity unsettles. Men encounter her and feel both the thrill of proximity and the ache of distance, the exhilaration of recognition and the discomfort of exposure. In her, the ordinary is illuminated, and the unconscious is called to the surface. She is a living paradox, at once unattainable and intimately familiar, tender and formidable, visible yet profoundly enigmatic. She reminds men that attraction is more than desire, that fascination is more than curiosity, and that obsession often signals a neglected interior landscape. You may find echoes of her in your own encounters, in women who have left indelible impressions, in moments of longing that resist closure, in memories that continue to shape your understanding of self and desire. She is less a person than a force, a psychological event that transcends ordinary comprehension, a mirror to the unconscious, and a catalyst for transformation. To encounter her is to confront the shadow within yourself, to awaken to depths of longing and potential previously unexplored, and to recognize that true fascination is not about possession, but about recognition, of the self, of the shadow, and of the unclaimed territories of consciousness. She moves like an uncharted current, invisible yet palpable, shaping the landscape of thought and feeling with subtle insistence. Her presence is not marked by spectacle but by gravity. Men feel it as a pull, an unnameable tension that stirs the depths of the psyche. There is no overt seduction, no calculated charm, only the unwavering alignment with herself, a resonance that penetrates defenses, bypasses rationality, and awakens a profound, often disquieting awareness. Those who attempt to chase, to categorize, to claim her, discover that she cannot be corralled. Every pursuit reveals more about their own shadows than about her, forcing them to confront projection, attachment, and the illusions of control. In this way, she is both test and teacher, a threshold of self-realization disguised as attraction. Her allure is amplified by the tension between presence and absence. In proximity, she demands attention not through performance, but through integrity, every gesture and glance charged with unspoken authority. In absence, she becomes a haunting, a ghost of potential realized and unfulfilled, a reflection of what the observer has not yet become. Obsession emerges not because of coercion, but because the unconscious recognizes in her a mirror of its own unclaimed completeness. Men mistake this pull for desire, when it is, in essence, a summons to introspection, a call to integrate shadow, to confront fear, and to awaken capacities that have lain dormant. She embodies the Jungian truth that attraction is never simple, that fascination is inseparable from reflection, and that the psyche will always seek what is most real and most elusive. She teaches through her very existence. Every choice, every moment of detachment, every refusal to perform for approval communicates a lesson in autonomy and self-mastery. Men sense it intuitively, often before their conscious minds can articulate it. That power is not in coercion, but in sovereignty, that influence is not imposed but radiated, that the deepest form of attraction arises from recognition, not possession. She is the embodiment of shadow integration, light and darkness held in balance, strength tempered by empathy, and mystery reconciled with presence. Her magnetism is not a product of superficial allure, but of psychological completeness, a resonance that cannot be replicated or manufactured. Her shadow is a paradoxical guide. It is at once a mirror and a challenge, revealing the insecurities, projections, and unhealed wounds of those who encounter her. She exposes the compulsions and illusions that underlie attachment, illuminating the spaces where ego and desire obscure authenticity. Men find themselves mesmerized not by her actions, but by what she awakens within them, the latent longing for wholeness, the confrontation with unclaimed shadow, the recognition of self beyond projection and habit. She demonstrates that obsession is often the psyche's way of pointing toward neglected territory, a call to reconcile desire with awareness, craving with understanding, and fascination with reverence. You may notice the echo of her presence in subtle ways, a thought that lingers, a feeling that refuses to settle, a reflection in memory that feels alive. She is less a figure to be possessed than a force to be acknowledged, an archetype of feminine depth and integrity that transcends the ordinary parameters of attraction. In witnessing her, one encounters not only another, but the untamed, unexamined dimensions of the self. She calls attention to the necessity of inner alignment, the danger of projection, and the transformative power of conscious awareness. Through her, attraction becomes a journey into the psyche, a dialogue between light and shadow, a confrontation with the truths one has long evaded. In her, the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist seamlessly. She navigates life with autonomy, presence, and an unshakable sense of self, challenging those around her to recognize the depth of what cannot be owned. Her magnetism is a reflection of wholeness, her silence a lesson in authority, and her absence a call to introspection. Men who encounter her are compelled to awaken to their own latent potential, to reconcile fragmented selves, and to confront the unclaimed aspects of desire and shadow. She is a living paradox, intimate yet elusive, tender yet formidable, present yet perpetually beyond grasp. She leaves traces not in grand gestures or flamboyant displays, but in subtle reverberations that linger long after the encounter. A look, a silence, a choice unmade, these become inscriptions on the psyche, echoing the depth of her presence and the completeness she embodies. Men who have known her feel the tug of something unresolved, a magnetic ache that is not about possession but about awakening. She illuminates the interior landscape they have neglected, the shadow they have refused to integrate, and the capacities for awareness and authenticity that have remained dormant. In this, she is less a woman to be acquired and more a force that catalyzes transformation, a living manifestation of what it means to be fully aligned with one's own selfhood. Her power is entwined with the subtlety of detachment. She does not follow the scripts of desire dictated by others, nor does she bend to meet expectations. Instead, she moves through the world with an unassailable self-possession that commands attention and reflection. Men are compelled not by overt seduction, but by the recognition of her sovereignty, the subtle insistence of her presence, and the enigmatic authority that radiates without effort. Every interaction becomes an invitation to confront the unconscious, the unexamined fears, desires, and projections that lie beneath the surface of conscious thought. In her orbit, attraction transcends mere fascination. It becomes a psychological journey, an exploration of shadow, and a confrontation with the parts of oneself that have long been denied or suppressed. She embodies paradox effortlessly. Tender yet formidable, present yet untouchable, intimate yet profoundly autonomous, her very being challenges conventional notions of connection and desire. Men feel both drawn and destabilized, intoxicated by the resonance she evokes yet aware of the distance they cannot bridge without first encountering themselves. Her shadow, far from a flaw, is a testament to integration, the seamless weaving together of light and darkness, vulnerability and strength, insight and mystery. It is precisely this integration that renders her unforgettable, that creates a psychological imprint that persists long after she has departed. Every man who encounters her faces the subtle but insistent challenge of self-awareness. Her presence surfaces projections, illuminates insecurities, and exposes the compulsions that drive attachment and obsession. What is often mistaken for mere infatuation is, in truth, the psyche's response to the mirror she holds up, a reflection of incompleteness, of potential unrealized, and of shadow unacknowledged. She is a catalyst for individuation, a living archetype who forces men to confront the interplay of ego, desire, and unconscious longing. In her wake, obsession becomes an opportunity for reflection, fascination a doorway to self-knowledge, and desire a call to reconcile the fragmented self. Her silence is as eloquent as her presence. In moments of stillness, the weight of her being communicates truths that words cannot. It is in these pauses that men feel the full force of her authority, the unyielding alignment with herself, and the clarity of intention that transcends need or expectation. This is the essence of feminine power she embodies, a power that radiates from authenticity, that commands respect without coercion, and that inspires introspection rather than compliance. Men who attempt to possess or define her encounter the resistance of her wholeness, a mirror to their own unintegrated shadows, a challenge they cannot circumvent. She lingers in memory not as an object of longing, but as an event of consciousness. Her influence is psychological, archetypal, and transformative, prompting men to examine their own inner terrain and to confront the dimensions of self they have long evaded. The fascination she evokes is inseparable from the awakening she catalyzes. The obsession is inseparable from the reflection she holds. In this, she is both muse and mentor, mirror and threshold, a living embodiment of the feminine shadow that is too potent, too integrated, and too psychologically profound to be forgotten or ignored. You may recognize her echo in the patterns of your own experience, in fleeting thoughts, persistent memories, and moments of unspoken tension that defy explanation. She is less a figure to possess than a force to encounter, a reminder that the deepest attraction arises not from superficial connection, but from the dialogue between conscious and unconscious, ego and shadow, longing and integration. Through her, the psyche is stirred, projections are revealed, and the journey towards self-awareness is accelerated. She embodies the paradox of intimacy and autonomy, presence and mystery, desire and detachment, a living archetype that leaves a mark far deeper than any fleeting passion could ever achieve. She lingers in memory as both absence and presence, a paradoxical force whose weight is felt long after the body has departed. Men carry her shadow unknowingly, in dreams, fleeting thoughts, or sudden pangs of longing that cannot be traced to a single cause. It is not that she has sought to haunt, but that her existence exposes the unclaimed, unexamined, and unresolved within those who cross her path. She awakens what has been dormant, the latent capacities for introspection, the courage to confront the ego, the acknowledgement of desires long denied, and the reckoning with shadow aspects that have shaped attachment, obsession, and longing. Her imprint is psychological, archetypal, and profoundly transformational. Her presence teaches that true power lies not in manipulation or coercion, but in mastery over oneself. She demonstrates that fascination is born not of pursuit but of authenticity, and that attraction is amplified by alignment with one's own value rather than compliance with another's expectation. Men are compelled to reckon with themselves, for she is a living mirror, reflecting their fears, insecurities, and projections. In every encounter, they are confronted with the uncomfortable truth that obsession often signals a neglected interior world, a shadow waiting to be integrated, a self yet to be reconciled. She awakens awareness without instruction, provokes reflection without intent, and transforms perception simply by existing fully within herself. She embodies paradox effortlessly, intimate yet untouchable, tender yet formidable, visible yet profoundly mysterious. Her magnetism is inseparable from the psychological completeness she exudes, the integration of light and darkness, strength and vulnerability, presence and absence. This synthesis, so rare and profound, ensures that she is unforgettable. Men feel both drawn and destabilized, captivated by resonance they cannot name and unsettled by truths they cannot escape. The shadow she carries is not a flaw to be corrected but a map to the self, a guide pointing toward consciousness, authenticity, and the wholeness that they have yet to claim. In her silence, she communicates power. In her absence, she commands reflection. In every measured choice, she teaches boundaries, sovereignty, and the subtle art of influence without demand. Those who have encountered her come to understand that the deepest form of attraction is not rooted in possession, but in recognition of the self, of the unconscious, and of the spaces where projection and longing meet awareness. She catalyzes transformation in ways that overt instruction cannot, showing that the dance between shadow and consciousness, desire and understanding, is where the truest growth occurs. You may recognize echoes of her influence in your own life, in lingering thoughts, unresolved feelings, or memories that refuse closure. She is less a person than a force, a living archetype that transcends temporal boundaries, a manifestation of feminine depth and integration that challenges, illuminates, and awakens. She calls attention to the interior world, to the landscapes of shadow, desire, and projection that men often avoid. To encounter her is to engage in a psychological dialogue, to face the unclaimed parts of oneself, and to confront the paradox of longing and autonomy, fascination and reflection, presence and absence. Her shadow is simultaneously invitation and challenge. She awakens latent potential, exposes unhealed wounds, and illuminates the ego's illusions. The men who have known her sense the pull of her absence because it reflects their own incompleteness, and they pursue what cannot be possessed, a reflection of the self yet unrealized. She teaches that obsession is often a signal, fascination a mirror, and desire a prompt to reconcile with the unconscious. In her, one sees that attraction at its most profound is a dialogue between conscious choice and the untamed currents of psyche, a confrontation with shadow, and a summons to integration. And so she leaves the world changed, not through effort or insistence, but through existence. Her influence is subtle, persistent, and transformative. She demonstrates that depth cannot be coerced, that authenticity commands more power than compliance, and that fascination arises from presence rather than performance. She lingers in thought and feeling, in longing and reflection, in the spaces where self and shadow meet. And in this lingering, she imparts the most profound lesson, that the woman who knows her worth is not bound by the desire of others, but by the alignment with herself. She steps into her own light without apology, a sovereign presence untouched by the clamor of expectation. The shadows she has carried, the contradictions, the fears, the desires, have been integrated, not denied. Men who once chased her are left with echoes, not because of absence, but because of the truth she embodies, a completeness that cannot be claimed, only witnessed. She moves through the world with grace and clarity, unbound by attachment, unaffected by longing that is not hers to hold. In her autonomy, there is a quiet celebration of self, a freedom that radiates and teaches without effort, reminding all who encounter her that power and attraction are born from integrity, presence, and wholeness. She leaves behind no instructions, no expectations, only the subtle but undeniable force of example. To encounter her is to understand that desire, fascination, and obsession are mirrors, reflecting not her, but the unclaimed aspects of the self. She has transmuted every projection into clarity, every longing into awareness, and every shadow into strength. In her wake, the world feels quieter, more profound, and infinitely more expansive. Men who believed they were pursuing her find instead that they have been awakened, to their own depths, to their own shadows, and to the profound truth that some forces cannot be possessed, only respected and understood. And so, she exists beyond pursuit, beyond longing, beyond the transient measures of admiration or desire. Her presence is an eternal reminder that the most potent form of power lies not in capturing attention, but in mastering the self. She has walked through the shadow, reconciled the light within darkness, and emerged whole, embodying the alchemy of feminine authority. She demonstrates that the echoes of fascination, obsession, and longing are not tools to bind, but signals to awaken, to integrate, and to honor the psyche in its fullest complexity. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.